Hi, I'm Commissioner Raquel Regalado. Thank you for joining us on your lunch break. Today, we're talking with one of our amazing community partners about the different programming and opportunities that we have and how we work with them and how we can work with you to do more and provide these services to all the residents of Miami-Dade County.
All right, so my name is Sarah Teitler. I am the marine turtle permit holder for Miami-Dade County Parks, Recreation, and Open Spaces Department, and I supervise the Miami-Dade County Sea Turtle Conservation Team. So we're going to talk a little bit about what our team does here in Miami on our beaches, and then a little bit about our sea turtles that we have here that nest on our beaches. So I'm going to start with the super basics about sea turtles. So sea turtles are egg-laying, air-breathing vertebrates, which are cold-blooded reptiles. So that means that they just regulate their body temperature based on the outside environment. So that's why we see sea turtles mostly just in more subtropical and tropical waters, because they like the warmer climate. So questions we get a lot are, what's the difference between a sea turtle or just a turtle that you see in a pond or a canal, or a tortoise that you see on land? So a sea turtle, they actually cannot retract their bodies into their shell. Their shell is their spine, their ribs. It is bone. So it is part of their body. They have really large, strong front flippers that they use for swimming in the ocean. And sea turtles never leave the water, even though they are air breathing. They'll come up to the surface to breathe air, but they'll never come out of the water unless it is to nest, to lay their eggs. Whereas a freshwater turtle, they also have webbed feet for swimming, but they do spend a lot of their time out of the water for sunbathing, sometimes eating, grazing. But they also, their webbed feet are also adapted to walk on land as well. And they can retract fully into their shell, mostly for protection. And then lastly, with a tortoise, like a gopher tortoise that we may see here in Florida, they can also retract fully into their shell, but they have strong legs that are used for walking and digging, and they have claws. They do not have webbed feet, and they are almost never found in the water. So they're strictly land-dwelling animals. And then a little bit more into the anatomy of a sea turtle. So their shell, or the top of their shell, is called the carapace. And then those shapes that you see almost like scales on a sea turtle, they're called scutes. So you can actually tell what species of sea turtle is based on the number of scutes that they have. They're lateral scutes, so on the side of their carapace. So this that you see here is a green sea turtle. They have 4 lateral scutes, whereas the loggerhead species will have 5 lateral scutes. So that's one of the ways we can ID sea turtles. And then the bottom of their shell is called the plastron, where they have scutes as well. And scutes cover almost their entire body, so they're also found on their heads. These are called their prefrontal scutes. And then rather than teeth, sea turtles have a serrated lower jaw. So specifically in green sea turtles, they use the serrated jaw to cut through seagrass, which they eat as their main diet. So when a sea turtle comes onto land to lay their eggs, they'll dig their egg chamber, which can be anywhere from 12 to 24 inches deep into the sand. And then they'll start laying their eggs. So their eggs actually have soft shells, unlike a chicken egg. So they'll kind of feel like a ping pong ball, and they're actually very close to the size of a ping pong ball. And they're soft so that when the sea turtle is dropping their eggs down into the egg chamber, they don't crack when they hit one another. So once they're laid inside the egg chamber, they'll take anywhere from 45 to 80 days to incubate, depending on the species of turtle. And then also depending on different variables like temperature of the sand, humidity, things like that. So one clutch or one nest can range anywhere from 80 to 180 eggs, which is, a lot of people are surprised at how many eggs they lay. But we'll talk more about this later. They need to lay so many eggs because the survivorship is so low in sea turtles. And then another interesting fact that I like to share is that the sex of the hatchling or the sea turtle is dependent upon the temperature of the nest. So if the incubation temperature of the nest for 1/3 of the incubation period is below 82 degrees, then the nest will be predominantly male. If it is above 84 degrees, the nest will be predominantly female. So that's actually one of the issues we see in Florida with temperatures being so high is that almost 99% of nests laid in Florida are predominantly female eggs because of their nesting season happening in the summer. The sand is so hot, creating almost all females. So once they hatch out of the egg, what their instincts are telling them to do is follow the brightest horizon. So what that should be is the moon reflecting off of the ocean. So they should be looking for the bright ocean water reflecting the moonlight. Once they make it to the ocean, they have this incredible energy, and they'll just keep swimming out for days to what's called the Sargasso Sea. So they'll make it out to the Gulf Stream and go into this current that brings them to the Sargasso Sea, where they will find these patches of seaweed or sargassum, and that's where they'll make their home for a couple of years until they grow large enough to come back closer to shore. So these mats of sargassum are actually super helpful for them because the sargassum has air bubbles that allow it to float on top of the water. So the hatchlings kind of just rest on top of the sargassum, and they hide from predators. They find food within the sargassum. So that's where they'll mainly stay for the first few years of their life. As juveniles, they not quite as large as an adult yet. So they'll spend most of their time in the Sargasso Sea still, but they'll begin to explore near shore habitats, such as seagrass beds. So once they reach sexual maturity, which can be anywhere from 15 to 30 years, then they'll start to make their way back towards breeding grounds. And females will actually return to their natal beach. So where they were born or where they hatched out of their egg, they'll actually return to that same beach using their navigation. So they'll come back to the beach and lay their eggs there after 15 to 30 years. And one female can lay up to 6 to 7 nests per season. So she'll mate offshore, she'll come to the beach, she'll lay her eggs, she'll go back out to the ocean for 2 or 3 more weeks, and then she'll come and lay another nest again. So in between these times, they're going back and forth to their feeding grounds, from their feeding grounds to their nesting grounds. So we'll talk about the specific species that we have here in Miami. So worldwide, we have 7 species. So we have the Kemp's Ridley, Olive Ridley, Loggerhead, Leatherback, Green, Hawksbill, and Flatback. And in Miami, we see 3 of those species. So the first species and most common is going to be the the Loggerhead. They are the most common nester in Miami. They make up 90 to 95% of our nests every year, which is about 500 nests on our beaches. So they start nesting around mid-April, so we're getting to that time soon. And then they'll nest all the way through September. So they have a pretty long nesting season. It's longer than any of the other two species that nest here. Loggerheads can get pretty large, anywhere from 200 to 400 pounds at adult size. They're known for their really large skulls, kind of why they got that name, the loggerhead. So their diet consists of mostly shellfish and crustaceans like lobsters, crab, conch, and they use that really large skull to crush the shells of their prey, rather than, kind of munching on seagrass. They like the hardier prey. So our second species will be the green sea turtle, which is kind of the most common sea turtle. When someone thinks of a sea turtle, they think of the green sea turtle because they're super pretty. They have really colorful shells, that really nice starburst pattern. They have a very cute little face. So everyone loves the green sea turtle. They're a little bit less common nesting here. Their nests only make up about 5% of our nests in the county, but you'll probably see them most commonly if you're out on the boat, because green sea turtles love to hang out in the seagrass beds. And we have a ton of seagrass beds here in Biscayne Bay. So if you're out on the boat and you see a sea turtle, it's probably likely a green hanging out around the seagrass beds. So they nest a little bit later, so from mid-May through September, and they can get even a little bit larger than the loggerheads. They can get anywhere from 300 to 500 pounds. They're the largest hard-shell sea turtle species, and like I mentioned, they eat mostly just seagrass and algae. And then lastly, we have the leatherback, which is personally my favorite turtle because I think they're really cool. They make up also about 5% of our nests in Miami-Dade County. They're just these massive creatures that can get up to 2,000 pounds, like the size of a small golf cart. So it's really rare to see them in the ocean because they live in really deep sea environments. But they do come up to nest, and they're usually our first nesting species. So in Florida, we've already had a couple of leatherback nests recorded. So we're hoping for Miami to get ours any day now. So they start around mid-March, and then they have a pretty short nesting season. They'll nest usually just until June. But we do get a handful of these every year. So they're the only sea turtle without a hard shell. And that's because, like I mentioned, they live in deep sea habitats. So when they dive down up to 1,000 meters deep, their shell doesn't crack under the pressure. And they are the largest sea turtle in the world. So a little bit about our role, Miami-Dade County Parks, in sea turtle conservation. So we work under the conservation unit in Miami-Dade County Parks Recreation and Open Spaces Department. So our team conducts daily nesting surveys on 19 miles of beaches from March 1st through October 31st. We're out there every morning. We start an hour before sunrise. If you're out on the beach, I'm sure you'll see us. We have our ATVs that we use to monitor. We operate under a Florida state issued permit, which is under Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. We work under our Marine Turtle Permit 150, and we use this permit to collect data for Miami-Dade County, for the state, and for federal agencies. So this is what it looks like when we're out in the field every morning. So we're riding these four-wheel vehicles. on the high tide line looking for these crawls. So on the left, you can see what a sea turtle crawl looks like. It's, they're pretty faint sometimes, but it's basically, we're just looking for their footprints. So you can see where the sea turtle slipper marks kind of came up and left little footprints in the sand. So we look for different characteristics to determine, did she nest or did she not nest? So sometimes they, a sea turtle will come up and decide, it's not the time or think conditions aren't right. She'll turn around and go back to the water. And then other times she will, pick a spot that she likes, and she'll take the time to dig out an egg chamber and lay her eggs, and then she covers them back up. So once we find a nest, we'll use wooden stakes and tape to mark off that nesting area so no one disturbs it. We attach our nesting signs that say, sea turtles are an endangered species. They're protected under the Endangered Species Act. It is illegal to disturb them. So we work long hours on the beach during our peak season. So after we mark off these nests, we monitor them every single day and look for signs of hatching. So like I said, it can take anywhere from 45 to 80 days. Once we witness a hatch, so they'll usually hatch at night, but we can see their teeny tiny footprints coming out, heading to the water. So once we notice a hatch, we'll mark that nest to be evaluated 3 days later. So this middle photo you see is a nest evaluation where we'll dig out the egg chamber once they've all left the nest, and we'll count how many hatched eggs so we can report that data to FWC. And then on the right, you'll see a little loggerhead hatchling. Something that you'll notice on its almost like its nose has this little tiny point. That's called the caruncle or egg tooth, and that's what they use to kind of break out of their egg when they're ready to hatch. And then after a few weeks, that little egg tooth just falls off. So why do we protect sea turtles in the state of Florida? Like I mentioned, sea turtles are endangered, and sea turtles are also a keystone species. So they support ecosystem function and balance in the ocean. So nearly all species of sea turtles are listed as critically endangered, or threatened. So we're working to monitor these populations and hopefully bring them back. So these are the categories of endangerment for each sea turtle. So the leatherback is critically endangered, which is our most endangered species in Miami. And the loggerhead and green are vulnerable, which is good. It means their populations are coming back, but they're still listed as endangered, so we still monitor them. And like I mentioned, why sea turtles lay so many eggs is because their survival rate is only about 1 in 1,000. So only about 1 in 1,000 sea turtles that make it to the ocean are going to survive to be at reproducing age again. And that is from a variety of different threats and factors that I'm going to talk briefly about. So one of our major threats here in Miami, as I'm sure you can guess, is plastic pollution. So we like to educate the public about both microplastics and macroplastics. So both can affect sea turtles. So microplastics being those little pieces of plastic that just continue to break down just from larger plastic pieces that are in the ocean. Then sea turtles and all other marine animals can ingest these, and it can create problems like blockages that will affect their survival rates. And then macroplastics includes any kind of trash you can think of, from plastic cups, plastic bags, balloons, plastic bottles, things that sea turtles can get entangled in or that they can ingest. So that's one of their main threats that we see here, especially in Miami being such a highly populated area. Another cause for mortality is boat strikes. This is our most common cause in Miami when we respond to a sick, injured, or dead sea turtle. It is more than 50% of the time a boat strike. So our number one cause for stranding response in Miami, and you can tell almost immediately when it's a boat strike because you can see the propeller marks on the sea turtle shell, unfortunately. So sea turtles, like we mentioned, are air breathing and also have their bones, like their spine and their ribs are part of their carapace. So when a propeller hits the shell, it's essentially breaking their spine or their ribs and puncturing their lungs. If they do survive, it can cause a buoyancy disorder, which they call bubble butt, which doesn't allow sea turtles to dive down. So they get air trapped in their shell. They can't dive down to escape predators, to escape other boats, or to hunt for food. So boat strikes are usually fatal to sea turtles, unfortunately. We also have chemical pollution that can occur here in the bay, in the ocean. So chemical pollutants can come from fertilizer runoff from land or from oil spills. And these chemicals can also be absorbed into our seagrasses, which is, the main diet for our green sea turtles. So it's really common in sea turtles to see these tumors called fibropapillomatosis. And these tumors can just restrict a turtle's movement and decrease their quality of life. And then artificial lighting can be a major threat for our hatchlings as well as adults, but we see it mostly in our hatchlings. So like I mentioned, the sea turtles come out of their nests and are looking for the reflection of the moon off the ocean. They can actually disorient from the city lights being so bright. So building lights from buildings on the west side of the dunes can cause disorientations. It can confuse the hatchlings into which way they're supposed to orient. And then once they start wandering the wrong way, they can often cause dehydration and exhaustion, and they'll never make it to the water. So on the top left photo, you can see what a successful hatch out looks like. It's those little tiny baby tracks that coming out of the nest. So that's how we can tell when a nest hatches. And then below that, you'll see a disorientation. So that's kind of footprints going every which way, usually wandering for hours on the beach. And we do find some of them, but far away from the ocean, sometimes in pools, in the grass, in buildings. So they can disorient quite far away. And then it also can affect our adult sea turtles, which is we don't see as often as hatchlings, but after a mother lays her nest, she can also become disoriented, finding her way back to the water. And that can be fatal for her as well, as she can get stuck somewhere or wander into the road. So what can we do to improve the lighting in Miami? If you live nearby the beach, we encourage everyone to close their blinds at night, shut off interior lights when they're not in use, and then keep exterior lights low, long, and shielded. That means low to the ground, shielded, so they're projected downward instead of outward, and then long, meaning a long wavelength. So red lights and amber lights aren't as disorienting as bright white or blue lights to sea turtles. So they can actually block out the amber and red lighting. If you're ever on the beach at night, especially during sea turtle season, Try not to use your flashlights. I think bonfires and fireworks are prohibited now in Miami. But all those things that are creating light, we should try to minimize those. And then following our local lighting ordinance, fortunately, the city of Miami just passed a new lighting ordinance that has greatly helped our disorientation rates in the city of Miami Beach in the past 2025 season. So we hope to see more improvement this year. More ways you can help, especially while you're enjoying your time at the beach. Make sure you're always keeping your distance from wildlife, observe from afar, take photos, just being respectful. And if you see wildlife in need of help, make sure you contact the correct authorized personnel to help. Reef Safe sunscreen is a really great way to help the health of our oceans. So ingredients that you want to avoid in sunscreen are these on the right. You have the oxybenzone and all these parabens that are harmful to corals and seagrass and marine life. So you want to look for reef-friendly sunscreens to use at the beach. Of course, you want to avoid single-use plastics, especially if you're on the beach or just outside. Try to use your reusable water bottle, reusable coffee cups, bringing a container with you when you go out to dinner for your leftovers, using your reusable bags at the grocery store. All these things contribute to and help our marine ecosystems, and not just marine ecosystems, but our natural ecosystems in Miami. One really big thing we see on the beach that also can trap sea turtles or become obstacles to them are just really big sandcastles and really big holes that are dug on the beach. So, if your kids are on the beach building a sandcastle or digging a big hole, just make sure you fill in your holes and knock down your sandcastles before you leave the beach, so it's not a giant obstacle to these little hatchlings trying to make it to the water. And of course, just never leave anything behind, whether it's beach furniture, trash, food, chairs, anything that came with you should come off the beach, so we can try to keep our beach and our oceans clean. And then lastly, if you ever do come across a sea turtle that you think may be injured or stranded, you can always call our stranding lines. We are available 24/7 to respond to sea turtle emergencies. So we are here, and there's also Florida Fish and Wildlife that is also available 24/7 to respond to these emergencies. And I have, if you scan this QR code, it'll bring you to our website for Miami-Dade County Parks that will just tell you more about our program and our outreach programs that we offer. If you're ever interested in attending a hatchling release, attending a nest evaluation, adopting a sea turtle nest, you can find out this information through this QR code or calling either one of these phone numbers listed here. And I will leave this contact information up here. Our phone numbers, emails, and the last is our Instagram. Be sure to follow us on Instagram. We post a lot about our sea turtle season, all of our hatchlings, our nests, what's happening, all of our updates. So give us a follow on Instagram, and I will leave this up for now, and I can take any questions. And thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do sea turtles lay at what time in the night? Or is there a particular...
Yeah, usually we'll say anytime it's dark. So anytime from usually 9 p.m. until sometimes we'll come across them up until an hour before sunrise. So really anytime the sun is down, they'll come out.
Awesome. I have another question.
Yes,
Is there, I don't know if you said this, I've been on and off. Is there opportunities for people to come out, join, learn, volunteer in the field?
definitely. We have so we host a monthly beach cleanup, um, either at Crandon Park or Hallver Park. So you can always get involved in our beach cleanups. And then we also host hatchling events. Those are on a pop-up basis. So, we can never predict when they're going to happen, but we do post them on our Instagram. So if you're interested in doing a nighttime hatchling release, where we release hatchlings to the water, if we have any left from the day that didn't make it, we'll attempt to release them at night. And then our public nest evaluations are in the mornings. So, like I said, once the nest hatches, a couple days later, we count the contents. So you can come watch us evaluate the contents. And all those events will be posted through our Instagram.
Thank you. I think we have something in the Q&A if you want to check it out.
Yeah, I see. So the first question is, how can you tell the difference between types of nests? So we look for different characteristics. So a loggerhead sea turtle actually crawls with an alternating gait. So their footprints are kind of like zigzag. So we know that's a loggerhead. And then a green sea turtle and a leatherback crawl with a simultaneous gait. So they'll use both flippers at once to pull themselves up. So they'll be parallel footprints or flipper marks. And then the way we tell the difference between the green and the leatherback is just the size or the width. So a leatherback will be huge, over 100 centimeters wide, or over 150 centimeters wide, where a green will be a little bit smaller, closer to like 80 to 120 centimeters. And then their nests have different characteristics as well. Leatherbacks actually camouflage their nests by crawling in circles over the egg chamber. So you can't tell where their mound is. And then greens almost make like this, it looks like a bomb went off on the beach. Like they dig this super big hole and throw all the sand into this giant mound. So the nests actually look very different as well. And the next question says, does your evaluation team place all of the hatched eggshells back in the nest or collect some of them to study and run tests? So we almost always place all of the hatched eggshells and any contents of the nest back inside the nest and cover it up, because that is really great re-nourishment for the beach. So all the nutrients go back into the sand and decompose there. There has been, we have participated in studies before where we'll take a single egg that is infertile from the nest. So it just has a yolk in it, no developed embryo or anything. And we will send that for genetic sampling to contribute to the Greater Florida's genetic assessment. So that is only in certain very specific cases, but almost every other time we'll put everything back into the nest and cover it up. And then the last question I see here is, have you seen an improvement in the survivor rates over the past few years? So yes, actually this past year, 2025, the green sea turtle was reclassified from endangered to threatened. So that was a really big win for the sea turtle community, that the green sea turtle population has really bounced back. So that is probably from 40 years of conservation. And then additionally, specific to Miami, we've seen a pretty significant improvement in the disorientation rates in the past year or two, from updated lighting ordinance and hopefully from our outreach that we've been spreading through all of Miami-Dade County. So the next question I see is it safe to handle the eggs? And why is it okay to do a sea turtle release? And how do we know the turtles will be okay? So, like I mentioned, we operate under an FWC permit. So only my team members on my permit are authorized to handle any kind of eggs, hatchlings, or nest material. So we take extensive training by the state, and we are authorized to handle these eggs. Members of the public cannot handle eggs, but with the hatchling releases, hatchlings are kept after. If we find hatchlings that are disoriented during the day, they cannot be released during the day because it is so hot out, and there's more predators when the sun is out and it's the middle of the day. So we don't want to release them during the day. We want to release them at nighttime when it's cooler for them and there's a better chance for their survival to get out to the water. So that's why we do it at night, and they have a safer chance of making it out at night. What is the most significant yet overlooked threat facing sea turtles in this specific region? I would say the most significant threat that is not addressed very much in Miami is our boat strikes, because Miami is such a highly trafficked boating area. The boat strikes are really detrimental to sea turtles because it's usually affecting the large turtles that are of reproducing age. So, if one sea turtle is killed by a boat that is at reproducing age, that sea turtle could have laid 6 or 8 nests that year, and that's a huge impact on the species and the population. And I think we can address this by, we are always trying to provide more outreach to marinas and parks on the water. And is this presentation available to the schools in Miami-Dade? Yes, definitely. You can reach out to my email here, Sarah Taylor, or Emily Bernfeld. And we're always coordinating presentations with schools, so we would definitely be happy to have our team come out to your school.